Here's how it used to work. There has always been a value exchange between platforms and content on the internet. The pact between a content company and Facebook and Google was pretty clear. We give you links, you give us traffic. We give users things to talk about, then we manage sales and yield on our owned platforms. Over the last couple of years, there's been a fundamental shift as platforms have matured and recognized the importance of content to the overall proposition. Yes, it was about speed, as Google pointed out yesterday, but it's really about creating an integrated experience for the consumer. Content has moved inside these platforms. Platforms have become more important wayfinders and distribution points. Content has become a source of value. We've seen it with how content has made its way into search results. We've seen it with Google AMP, with Facebook and instant articles and video, with Snapchat Discover, certainly with Amazon, and in the bold ways content has become merchandising for Prime memberships. We've seen it in our homes with Alexa and Google Home. Again, the codependency between distribution and content is as old as media. Both make one proposition. Distribution is king, content is King Kong. You pick the analogy. One way or another, today it's just part of the math of the feed. I would argue a very important part. Take away content from Facebook, and you might not be as interested in what remains.
Go back to the cable analogy.
Yep.
Because, yes, on the one hand, you could argue that equilibrium between content and distribution grew and came into existence.
Yep.
On the other hand, you could say, looking at TCI and John Malone, that the distributors won because they ended up owning most of the content companies.
A chunk of them,
yeah. And those battles still take place.
Yeah.
So when you go back to that historical analogy and you project forward, what do you take from it? If you're going to now look 2 years in the future, 3 years in the future, what will you say your position
I'll tell you what it did to me, because it partially happened over the holidays, because I read that book called The Cable Cowboys, which I was like, whoa, this is like now.
Yeah.
And I guess one thing that I think is really important is it emboldened me, because it just made it so clear that we're deeply indebted to Facebook and Google and all the others, Snapchat, because they're really, really important to us. But this is a negotiation, and we play a very important role. And the tension between these two things is not new, right? I mean, like, the content companies were furious with Malone, right? I mean, and so that tension, kind of evolved over time. The good thing is that the stability in the cable systems and the amount of money in there because of the bundle created, an ecosystem that content could really flourish inside of. And we haven't got there yet. Right? So, I mean, what it feels like real time to be running a media company is really a scramble, because the most important thing, the sort of bedrock on which you build a media company, is distribution. And it's shifting so quickly. And it's shifting in ways where you're like, where are my ad rights? How much of this dollar do I get? And making content for 15 outlets is really challenging. Right?
And expensive.
Right. So for me, it was like, this has happened before. The system needs to mature. It needs to mature with a group of thoughtful people on the content side putting pressure on the system. Because the big difference is we're really fragmented.
Right. So if you could do one thing, and you'll do more, but let's say a first thing, having this understanding now, going into your negotiations with a Google, a Snapchat, a Facebook, a Verizon, if they get into the position that Marnie was describing yesterday, what one thing?
There's two things.
Okay.
You got to be both a great partner and a good listener, and you can't be afraid to walk away. Because there is no negotiation unless you can't walk away.